Hey guys, I'm going to be reading Lewis and Clark, A Prairie Dog for the President. This will incorporate some social studies, and I got this at a book fair, hence the price on it. So this will definitely incorporate social studies, so I hope your kids like it. In 1803, Thomas Jefferson was the President of the United States. The country was still new. It was also very big. It was so big no one had ever explored it all. President Jefferson wondered how long it would take to reach the Pacific Ocean. He wondered what the land was like along the way. The president wrote to his friend Meriwether Lewis. Lewis was a soldier. He wanted to be an explorer. Lewis's buddy William Clark wanted to be an explorer too. Lewis and Clark went to see the president. "I need someone to explore the West," said the president. "We'll do it," said Lewis and Clark. The president told Lewis and Clark to make maps and explore rivers. He told them to collect plants and draw wild animals. Most important, he told them to send presents. Lewis and Clark needed helpers for their journey. They took soldiers, scouts, and boatmen. Lewis even took his dog. It was a long trip. One of the scouts brought his wife, Sacagawea. Sacagawea was a big help. She picked nuts and berries. She cooked meat and stew. She talked and traded with the Indians they met on the way. Out west, Lewis and Clark made the maps. They explored rivers. They collected plants. They saw animals they had never seen before. They saw buffalo. They saw grizzly bear. They saw jackrabbits with long ears. They drew pictures of the animals. They tried to catch some of the animals to send to the president, but the buffalo were too big. The grizzly bears were too dangerous. The jackrabbits were too fast. The president will think we've forgotten him, they worried. One day, Lewis and Clark came to a prairie. The ground was filled with holes. A little animal sat by each hole. "What are those?" asked Lewis. Just then a hawk flew overhead. The little animals barked. Then they dived into their holes. See the little animals? "Let's catch one of those rascals," Clark said. "They are small enough to send to the president." The soldiers took shovels and picks. They dug and dug, but the little animals were too fast. "Let's flood them out," Lewis said. The men carried water from the river. Lewis poured the water into a hole. Clark and the soldiers waited beside the other holes. They waited and waited and waited. Then one of the animals popped up. "I've got it," said Clark. Clark put the animal in a cage. "I wonder what it is," he said. Lewis laughed. "It is a wet rodent. You can call it a ground rat." "No," said Clark. "It looks like a squirrel." "I'll call it a barking squirrel." "Squirrels don't bark," said a soldier. "Dogs bark. We should call it a prairie dog." "That's it." Lewis and Clark agreed. Lewis and Clark picked a scout to take the prairie dog to the president. Clark also gave the scout some birds to take. They were called magpies. Lewis gave the scout a letter for the president. He gave him plants that he had collected. The soldiers gave him buffalo skins and deer horns. "Have a nice trip," said Lewis and Clark. Look at all that stuff he's taking to the president. The scout and the animals rowed a barge down the river. They boarded a big ship in New Orleans. The ship sailed around Florida. Then it sailed north to Baltimore, Maryland. Finally, the ship landed in Baltimore. The scout put the animals and the other presents into the back of a wagon. He paid the driver to take everything to President Jefferson in Washington, D.C. The president met the wagon at the White House. He picked up the prairie dog's cage. "Is this a gopher?" he asked. "No," said the driver. "I think it's a woodchuck." President Jefferson read the letter from Lewis. A soldier named this creature a prairie dog. It lives on the western prairie and barks like a dog. The president gave the prairie dog a piece of apple. Chomp! The prairie dog gobbled it right up. The president laughed. Americans will want to see this little fellow, he said. I will send these fine presents to Mr. Peel's museum. Mr. Peel's museum was in Philadelphia. The prairie dog and the other gifts rode in a stagecoach to the museum. It was a very bumpy ride. Mr. Peel loved the presents. He sent President Jefferson a thank you note. The prairie dog is a pleasing little animal. He is not at all dangerous, like a groundhog, he wrote. Mr. Peel put the cage in a sunny room. Children came to see the prairie dog. Artists came to draw its picture. The visitors touched the buffalo skins and the deer horns. They stayed at the magpies. The American West must be a wonderful place, they said. The West was wonderful. Lewis and Clark were gone for 2 years exploring it. In November of 1805, they finally reached the Pacific Ocean. They were heroes. If you travel west today, you can still see some of the sights Lewis and Clark saw. You can see grizzly bears and buffalo. You can see jackrabbits and magpies. And if you are lucky, you might even see a prairie dog. So, at the end of it, you have a picture of what they actually look like. It's Lewis and Clark. So the authors note, this is a true story, and Lewis and Clark were real explorers. Mr. Peel was also an artist. He painted these pictures of Lewis and Clark and put them in his museum. Today, the museum is called Independence Hall. You can actually go there and visit. So this definitely incorporates some social studies, and I hope your children like it. Thank you.